Okay, perfect. Hi, everyone. My name is Evelyn Riley, and I am a research project specialist at Greenland's Blue Waters. My connection to the U of M and sustainable agriculture goes back a ways. I graduated from the U in 2015 with an undergrad degree in food systems, then returned a few years later to earn a master's degree in applied plant sciences with a focus on agronomy and agroecology. My research focused on kernza, a perennial grain that fits nicely under the umbrella of continuous living cover. So I'm very excited about these crops, and I'm thrilled to be here today to tell you about our course, Continuous Living Cover 101. I'm going to share some links now that I will mention in the presentation, so you can check those out. Um, Though I'll also share those again at the end of the presentation. Um, so we are also excited to be a part of River Days of Action 2024. The Mississippi River Network's River Days of Action connects thousands of people to celebrate and take action for the river, people, land, water, and wildlife. You can check out onemississippi.org/riverdays or search River Days of Action 2024 to find more events. So what is Continuous Living Cover 101? It is an online introductory training course aimed at early career agricultural conservation professionals and technical advisors that presents a framework for thinking about regenerative agricultural practices and how to implement them. In designing the course, we had in mind people like an early career NRCS agent or a Pheasants Forever Farm Bill biologist. However, the information is presented in an accessible way and has broad relevance. So, a wide variety of people might find it useful, such as farmers themselves, graduate students, or anyone interested in different approaches to sustainable agriculture. That's the very general overview, but I want to step back for a moment and give you some background on Greenland's Blue Waters, who we are, and why what we do connects to river health. Then I'll explain more about what continuous living cover means and share some more details on the course. So, Greenland's Blue Waters was formed in 2024 by a group of land grant universities and agriculture and environmental organizations. We are housed within the Minnesota Institute for Sustainable Agriculture at the University of Minnesota, and our geographic focus is the upper Mississippi River Basin. Specifically, we focus on Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Illinois, and Missouri, although a lot of our work is certainly transferable to other areas of the Midwest, and in some aspects, the country as a whole. We have a broad network of partners that includes universities, researchers, educators, producer associations, NGOs, small businesses, government agencies, policymakers, and farmers. Our mission is increasing broad support for perenniality and year-round living cover in agriculture, which we refer to as continuous living cover. So, what is continuous living cover? Let's talk a little bit more about that briefly. Continuous living cover, or CLC, means keeping some sort of living plant in the ground year round on productive agricultural land using a combination of strategies: agroforestry, perennial biomass, perennial forage, perennial grains, and rotations of annual crops that include cover crops or winter oilseeds. They can be combined across time or space in all sorts of different ways, but the key idea is that the soil is never left bare. We differentiate CLC from edge of field strategies, such as vegetative buffers or prairie strips. which are important and complementary, but not a direct part of production systems. CLC agriculture is based on using commodity producing crops to provide a wide range of benefits. Some crops for CLC agriculture, such as perennial grain crops and winter oilseeds, are new. Other CLC systems are based on existing crops, like alfalfa for hay, or intensively managed grazing for meat and dairy production. Um, those are not at all new, and in fact, alfalfa is the fourth most widely grown crop in the US. So, while some aspects of these strategies are still in development, others are actually pretty well established. CLC agriculture is designed to build on the strengths of our current agricultural system. And rather than completely taking row crop land out of production, CLC can change or augment those current production systems. So, why is CLC important? Well, for one, farmland stays in production. We're well aware that farmers face economic necessities of producing crops and livestock for sale, and we want to promote solutions that allow them to continue doing this. Certain CLC systems can even support improved farm economics because they can help farmers reduce input costs, diversify their operation, or increase the resilience of the operation. The primary driver behind continuous living cover, though, is the environmental benefits that these systems provide. Keeping living roots in the soil in one way or another through a combination of these strategies builds soil, reduces erosion, improves water quality, and supports habitat for a variety of birds, insects, fish, and other animals. All of these things ultimately benefit the local and regional human communities. Continuous living cover helps make farming communities healthier and more pleasant places to live and makes them more environmentally and economically resilient. So here's a visual way of thinking about this. Natural ecosystems have their functions intact and are good at providing all sorts of benefits to human society, including regulating water flow, filtering water, sequestering carbon, producing timber and other products, and much more. But they don't typically produce high yields of food or feed crops. In contrast, intensive annual monocrop systems can produce high yields of food, feed, and fuel crops with high inputs. But we end up sacrificing most of those ecosystem services and creating severe soil and water quality degradation. The framing that completely separates natural systems from agriculture is very reductive. And part of the idea of CLC is that we actually can have it all, more or less: production of food, feed, fiber, and fuel, and ecosystem services, and maintenance of natural resources like soil and wildlife habitat. So here is, there we go. Here is an example of what that can look like on a landscape scale. If you have ever flown over the Midwest or seen aerial photos, you've seen parts of the country that look a lot like the graphic on the left. Corn, soy, maybe some alfalfa or small grains, depending on where you are exactly. Um, it's important to note that for the most part, that's all animal feed and ethanol. It's not feeding people. But on the right is an example of a diversified landscape with various CLC strategies, including perennial grains, cover cropped annual systems, and agroforestry. And as you can see, most of that land is still producing crops, but it's doing it in a way that protects soil and water quality at the same time. So here is a real life example of that, where on the left we have row crop fields in North Dakota with very limited crop diversity. And on the right, we have a diversified organic farm in Minnesota that grows Kernza perennial grain, food grade small grains and soybeans, sweet corn, hazelnuts, and more, along with cover crops and strategically placed trees and strips of native prairie plants. So it's maintaining some of that ecosystem function, providing habitat, and producing a variety of tasty, nutritious food products for people. This really is possible on a broad scale. The majority of barriers right now have to do with policy and the level of corporate influence and control that we have allowed in agriculture. Continuous living cover is not at all a new idea. Concepts like use of cover crops, agroforestry, perennials, and crop rotation actually go back millennia. Virgil, a Roman poet, mentions legume cover crops and rotations and perennials sometime around 29 BCE. If you know Roman history, you also know that Romans were responsible for an incredible amount of deforestation and erosion. So they had some of the same problems that we do. Um, Native American agriculture practices include forest farming, perennials, intercropping, and much more. Many of those are also hundreds or thousands of years old. Obviously, they vary by region and are adapted to different climates and ecosystems. But all that is to say that we are not trying to claim this as our own innovation. We are trying to present an approachable framework to think about continuous living cover and think about where we can apply this in contemporary agricultural systems. Um, Continuous living cover is also not the only way that this can be conceptualized. For example, it's quite similar to the NRCS soil health principles. And those are maximize presence of living roots, minimize disturbance, maximize soil cover, and maximize biodiversity. And I mention this specific example just to emphasize that this concept and these benefits are much broader than us as an organization. Continuous living cover, or whatever name you use, is a virtually universally applicable concept to think about and to design sustainable agricultural systems. So now I want to bring this back around to river health, since this is part of River Days of Action. I've already mentioned that CLC has a lot of environmental benefits, including soil and water quality, but how does it relate to the Mississippi River specifically? Here is some material that is in our course, actually. On the left, is a photo of water that is full of sediment. It's running off a conventional cornfield, which is a system that doesn't do much to reduce erosion or nutrient loss because the soil is bare for so much of the year. You can see how that water is light brown, kind of coffee colored because of all the soil particles that it's holding. Whereas on the right, there's water running off a no-till cover-cropped soybean field, and it's noticeably clearer. Keeping the soil covered and reducing disturbance from tillage has stabilized the soil in the soybean field and reduced erosion. And you can even see where the water from the soybean field meets the other water running through that ditch and the striking difference between those two. So these are just two fields, but imagine this on a landscape scale. And knowing that we have millions of cropped acres in the Mississippi River Basin, around 80 million actually, think of the combined impact of all of that sediment and all of the dissolved nutrients that are ending up in the Mississippi River as a direct result of the agricultural practices used on that land. Here are some numbers to back this up. Agricultural runoff accounts for about 40% of phosphorus loading to the Mississippi River under average conditions. And a combination of cropland, groundwater, tile drainage, and runoff accounts for over 70% of nitrogen pollution in the Mississippi River. These are from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. Um, And unfortunately, even the so-called best management practices have actually done relatively little to reduce nutrient losses from agricultural land. This article quotes several of our research collaborators who are doing excellent work on these topics. I linked this article at the beginning and I'll link it again at the end, but it's a good read. For example, there are overall increases in non-flow adjusted nitrate loads measured in the Mississippi River at the Red Wing Lock and Dam. They have increased by 62% over the past 20 years. This is in the August 2020 progress report on the Minnesota Nutrient Reduction Strategy. On a broader scale, in a 2020 report, the USDA noted that while gains were made, shifts in crops, cropping patterns, and tillage systems outpaced nutrient application research and guidance and industry capacity to deliver and apply nutrients efficiently. Consequently, subsurface losses of nitrogen and soluble phosphorus increased with the expansion of crops with higher nutrient demand. So there are some nuances to that, and there are things that can be done within conventional row crop systems to improve some aspects. Um, but ultimately, we do need a fundamental shift in the way we farm because the incremental improvements are just not cutting it. And this will be a pretty significant change from the status quo, and it will take ongoing work. But that is why Greenlands Blue Waters was created. We're certainly not the only one working on that. There's many great organizations out there, a lot of individuals working hard on this as well. And here's kind of the way we're thinking about this. We use a variety of strategies to work on transitioning agriculture to more continuous living cover, collaborating with many partners in different areas of the food system, research, education, outreach, policy, and more. And this is where our CLC 101 course fits in. Course development was funded by a SARE Professional Development Grant, which is designed to support projects to train agricultural professionals. CLC 101 uses a train the trainer approach. The idea is to reach people like agricultural technical assistance providers or conservation planners so that they can go out and implement these practices when they work with farmers and landowners, hopefully maximizing the reach and impact of the course. And by focusing on early career professionals, we hope that this is something they could use in their work for the next several decades, potentially having a really significant impact on how they think about and do agricultural conservation work. So let's get to what the course actually looks like. This is just the landing page. The course is hosted on Regain, which is the Regenerative Ag Idea Network, which is a project of one of our partner organizations. Regain already hosts a variety of online courses related to sustainable agriculture. Definitely worth checking out. There's cool stuff on grazing and a variety of other topics. Um, all you have to do is create an account. It's totally free, no cost to the course or to the Regain account. We've also designed a version with different software, same content, different program that could be hosted on another site in the future to maximize accessibility. But for now, find it on Regain. Again, I shared that link in the chat earlier, but I'll make sure to share it again at the end. But you can also search for Regenerative Ag Idea Network and the site will come up and then you can just go navigate to courses and you'll find ours there. So it's a really easy to use platform. It's, a simple layout and nice and colorful. The main course page gives an overview of all the different modules and lessons in the course. It also has a PDF of the CLC resource list that we reference throughout the course. Right there on the main page, we also direct learners to where they can find a complete transcript of the course and peer-reviewed journal citations for the information presented, because we really wanted to make sure that this was well supported, grounded in the scientific literature. So all that is there. There's a narration throughout the course, but learners can also just refer to that transcript and read the information instead of or in addition to listening to the audio. So here's the outline of the course. It starts by presenting CLC as a framework for thinking about how to implement regenerative and sustainable agriculture, with the central idea that CLC is a flexible set of strategies that provides a conceptually simple, flexible, and adaptive approach to agriculture that restores and maintains ecosystem services. So that's what I talked about earlier, just beginning the course with that. The main content starts with a module on basic soil health to ensure that trainees have the background to understand why these practices are so significant for soil health. Then we describe the 5 strategies in detail with an example crop for each. The third module covers the wide range of benefits that CLC provides. Finally, the fourth module addresses implementation, providing extensive resources, tips on how to talk to farmers, and ways to address barriers. It also goes through 3 realistic scenarios to practice working with a farmer to identify practical CLC strategies. So, the learning outcomes are what we really want people to take away from the course. We want them to define the term continuous living cover in plain language. We want them to explain the basic physical makeup of soil and why CLC impacts it. Recognize that CL strategies can be used to achieve the Natural Resource Conservation Service soil health principles, which is particularly important if they're working within that framework. Describe the 5 CLC strategies, explain the benefits of CLC on agricultural landscapes, and recognize that CLC strategies fit into NRCS practice standards for addressing resource concerns. Again, important if they're working within that NRCS framework. We also want those things to translate to practical benefits for their work with farmers and landowners. This course will support them in being able to identify potential opportunities to use CLC practices in various farming scenarios, recognize that implementation of CLC will be different for each site, identify factors that make implementation different for each site, and locate sources for additional assistance and decision making. There are multiple interactive and engaging elements of the course. There are real on-farm examples of how farmers have put these strategies into practice. There are videos featuring farmers talking about their operations and the benefits they have observed for soil, water, habitat, and economic resilience. There are short quizzes to reinforce key concepts. We really tried to make this something that would be an enjoyable training experience. There are tons of photos throughout, and it moves along pretty quickly from page to page. Throughout the course, we refer to the CLC resource list, which I mentioned briefly, a document that we created that includes dozens of resources related to continuous living cover, such as farmer serving nonprofits, university programs, informational videos, readings, and much more. It's not just technical info on agricultural practices. It also includes resources related to farmer mental health, land access, discrimination in agriculture, and pathways to greater equity in agriculture. In addition, we are compiling a CLC champions list, a list of farmers who practice CLC strategies and are willing to participate in events, host field days, or otherwise participate in outreach and education activities. So why now? We've pretty much covered the course content, but I also want to address why this meets a current need. Conservation organizations often hire recent graduates with undergraduate or master's degrees in conservation biology or a related field. These new staff members may have solid biology or ecology backgrounds, although that's not always the case. But what we heard from our partner organizations is that they often don't have a lot of agricultural experience. We designed this course to help meet that need for accessible, practical information on realistic ways that technical advisors and agricultural conservation professionals can help farmers identify and implement strategies that keep land in production while also protecting soil health, water quality, and habitat. Finally, and briefly, a little bit about how this was designed. So in order to do it as effectively as possible, we've worked with a range of partner organizations and experts. For the actual technical design of the course, we worked with the Conservation Professional Training Program, which is a part of the University of Wisconsin-Madison Extension. They provided expertise on e-learning software and the like, but also instructional design to make sure that our content was effectively delivered to learners. We also partnered with three organizations to both get early feedback on content and to pilot the course with staff members. So those are Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever, the Board of Water and Soil Resources, and Wisconsin Land and Water. Having their input has helped us tailor the course to the intended audience's needs. They also recruited staff members to pilot the course so we could get some initial feedback from actual target audience members on the time and effort required and the relevance of the content to their work. Having that pilot feedback also allowed us to tweak a few things and clarify some concepts for the final version. We also worked with about a dozen expert reviewers um, from these organizations and institutions shown here to ensure that the course content is accurate, relevant, and up to date. This included university staff and faculty, farmers, and staff at several of our partner nonprofit organizations. So please help us spread the word about this course. If you are interested in taking the course or have someone in mind who might be, please let us know. You can certainly just go ahead and take it on the website. But if you are interested in having a group of staff take it and would like additional support, or if you'd like an introductory presentation on it or anything like that, feel free to reach out to me and we can facilitate that. Yeah, that's everything on CLC 101. Thank you so much. I will put those links in the chat again and happy to answer any questions.